All right, welcome everybody. My name is Josiah Wilson, and for my final project, I created a 3D terrain model of a segment of the Grand Canyon. Okay, so I pretty much did all of this project through ArcGIS Pro, just because I'm fairly familiar with that program. So after linking my folder to my working directory, I selected the Add Data tab, and from there, I chose some imagery provided by Envy um, in a folder called the Living Atlas. In that folder, I searched terrain and added this to my map, which you'll see in the next slide. So this is the data that I added to my project from the Envy file or folder, Living Atlas. This is a world terrain or DEM. So we can zoom in and out, showing us anywhere in the world their terrain as a DEM file. So this is zoomed into my study site, not fully zoomed into where I wanted exactly, but fairly zoomed in just to show what it looks like from a distance. Now, what I didn't like about this portion here, what we see is the contrast in the colors. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, I've got the symbology tab pulled up by right-clicking the terrain layer. From here, we see that the statistics are in the drop-down selected as data set. What this does is, because we've only zoomed in from the main world view, it's still taking the highest and lowest elevations into account in this image. So that's why everything's so gray. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that to something else in the next slide to show a better contrast. So here you can see in that statistics area, we've selected the drop down and shows DRA. This is dynamic range. So instead of taking the whole world into account, it's only taking what we've zoomed into and correcting the symbology for highest to lowest just by what's viewed here, which I think looks really nice. In this image, we've just gone ahead and zoomed in a little bit further, but a cool thing I found is if you grab that map tab or whatever you have your project named, you grab that and you pull it out from where it was at, you can edit and crop this image without messing up your projection. So that's what we did. I went ahead and cropped it a little bit more to show the exact area that I wanted. And then we're going to export this. So again, right click on the terrain layer, click on export and export raster. We're going to change a couple settings here. In the X and Y boxes, there's a limit to how many cells we can export. I can't remember exactly what it was, but for my image, I exported a cell size of 8178 by 8178. Renamed this as GCDEM and exported. So then we've added the GCDEM to my project. We can go ahead and delete the world terrain, the large DEM file. We don't need it anymore. We're just going to be working with this section here. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to go to our toolbox, open up the geoprocessing tab and select Hillshade, input our DEM layer, and the output is going to be renamed as some type of hillshade terrain raster, and run. This is what that output looks like. This is our hillshade raster. Now we're going to run another program called raster to tin. Input, we're going to input the hillshade raster. I think in the screenshot, I inputted the wrong thing, but output, we're going to output it as a raster tin, creating a tin file. All right, so this is our output TIN file, our triangular irregular network, pretty much showing terrain to an extent, whatever extent that would be. Now, we can see this TIN just from the map tab as a 3D, but to view it a little bit better, we're gonna throw it in ArcScene, but from ArcMap or ArcPro, we can just go ahead and hit the map tab and create new local scene. This just opens another tab as a scene. Import that TIN layer in there, which is where what you see here in this image. Next, we're going to add a base map. You can see it adds it as a 2D layer as world imagery, and it's above our raster TIN. We're going to leave it like that, and we're going to change the transparency. So here we've changed the transparency of the world imagery base map to 50%. What this is going to allow us to do is still see our TIN, so we can see the red, the green, the yellow, showing us a cool elevation profile. But it's also going to allow us to see through, or I guess, see the base map overlaid on top of the TIN and show a little bit more detail. So I think that looks pretty cool. So here's a screenshot of kind of that 3D view there. You can see of the Grand Canyon looking down the canyon. You can see some bushes and rocks and terrain from that base map, but you can also see the red and the coloration showing the elevation change, which I think is pretty cool. So that's the final project there. The last thing I went ahead and did was made an animation out of it just to add a little bit more to the project. So to do this, I went to the animation tab, click on that little camera, and then you take a frame or you take a picture, which is a frame, everywhere you want the camera animation to fly through. And I just panned around, zoomed in, exported this as an MP file, an MP4 file. We'll go ahead and play the file for you. Lots of options on how to export this. An MP4 file worked the best for my Mac with 720 resolution. It took about 40 minutes to make and process. So it shows fairly good detail, and I like how it turned out. Thank you.